Welcome, everybody. My name is Leslie Warner. You'll see my name on the screen. The camera on my computer is not working well, so rather than have you see strange freeze frame shots of me randomly, we'll keep me invisible for the moment. I work in the Tufts Career Center in the Alumni Career Services department, which means those of you that go to Tufts, I might be talking to you about career things after you graduate. And today we're going to spend approximately an hour, and I have some advice to give you, some screenshots, some more samples of different LinkedIn profiles to show you. I'll use my profile not as a sample exactly, but just so I can show you how the updating and editing works a little bit. But mostly we'll be talking about what kinds of things do you want to share on your LinkedIn profile, and how does that reflect what we call your brand? What's that about a little bit? There'll be time for questions. You can use, if you hover your cursor around, if it isn't visible already, there should be a kind of a toolbar with a chat option or chat bubble. You can type in questions to the chat at any time. And if you type it to everyone, then I can see it later when I check. Susanna Kren, who's helping me on the back end and helping with the technology, she'll be able to see it. If you prefer to ask a question anonymously, that's totally fine. And you can select on the chat to go to, and it'll be by you by name, right, Susanna? It'll say, send it, yeah. And then it can say to Susanna Kren.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Either one of those options is great.
Totally fine. It's direct to Susanna Kren, and that's a private message, so or to everybody, and then everyone can see it in the chat if they look. So again, welcome. And again, just a reminder, this will be recorded. So if you want to check back in with it, or friends want to check in and listen to it, that'll be up on our YouTube channel soon. And get the next slide to wake up. Yeah. I mentioned briefly, we're going to talk about LinkedIn, and we'll talk about why. We're sort of assuming it's a good thing, but we'll talk a bit about why it's a good thing and an important thing for most of us, all of us. How do you build a great profile? Some of you may already be using LinkedIn or have gotten started with your profile, so I'll try to address, ways to get started, and then ways to build it or increase what you can do with it when you're feeling a little more comfortable there. What is this brand thing, and how do you show it on LinkedIn? How do you use LinkedIn to explore or research career path ideas? How do you use LinkedIn to find and connect with students and alumni? And then some resources to help you continue to be more comfortable and try different kinds of things with LinkedIn that you can do when you're comfortable, as well as building that profile. Again, I know, if some of what I say doesn't totally make sense to you yet, because if you're brand new to LinkedIn, that's okay. Lots of resources out there, both on our Career Center, Tufts Career Center website, and your own school will have resources too, if you're at a different school, to help you get started and other ideas to move it forward. So why LinkedIn? Well, I looked up this number because every time I give a LinkedIn workshop, the number is bigger. 660 million users. It is the largest professional networking database in the United States and in many other countries and regions as well. One quick tip, if you are planning to do networking or job search activities in another country, when the time comes, you want to check out if there are other platforms or websites that are used in that country. That's true in some countries, although LinkedIn is kind of taking over the world. Another reason to use it is a fixed point on the web that you can control. In other words, you decide what information is there, you edit it. No one else has that power to change your information or edit it. And you can use that then to show information about you, information that you want to share about yourself, and also to connect and communicate with people. And that fixed point on the web, that's a good thing, right? It means that when you have a change in your life, a new job, a new internship, a new experience, you update it and you share the information, which is good. It is such a great tool for research, learning about different kinds of careers. As of course, there are job ads on LinkedIn too, that's allowed. But we're going to focus today mostly on the profile and networking and connecting part of it. And it's really the easiest way to find and connect with alumni of your school and possibly other folks in working in an industry or a company or a job that you might be interested in. And it's the easiest way for employers to find you. Should you have a handshake or whatever, a jobs platform profile at your school? Yes, of course, but again, not all employers are looking at that. LinkedIn just has such a broad reach. So if you have the opportunity to do both, yes, do both. So before we get into all the details of building a great profile, I wanted to talk about this brand thing. It's a big topic on itself. And you can read more if you're curious, just Googling what is my personal brand and how does it help my career. You can find some interesting articles about that, interesting ideas, but the basics are your brand is just when you think about, if you think about a commercial brand, like a kind of car, like Subaru, right? What do we think about with a Subaru? We think safety. We think maybe it's sometimes some of them are rugged and might be able to go, up in the mountains. That's what we see in the commercials. You're having adventures. That's associated with their brand. They also, I think, like to say that they're reliable and fuel efficient. On the other hand, if you think of like a Corvette or a fancy sports car, right, that has other associations. They're not bragging about their fuel efficiency. I promise you. They're having other kinds of images associated with it, and that's their reputation, facts about them, but also the feeling or the values or the experience of the product. So your brand, it's going to be about your skills, the knowledge you've gained through courses you've taken or experiences that you've had. It's going to be things you care about to some degree, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You might share student activities or clubs you're part of as part of your LinkedIn communication. You might share volunteer work that you do, and how you share that and where you put it on the LinkedIn profile partly depends on just how important it is to what you want to communicate. And we'll talk about that later. But basically the brand is, how do you want to be viewed? What do you want people to know about you, particularly future employers or people in a professional network? How do you want them to see you? And you can influence that by what you say and how you present things. And we'll talk about that more. So how do you get started? Well, my view is, especially, you're starting out as a student, a young professional, growing professional, start with your resume, because a lot of the content, the words that you put in the LinkedIn profile are going to come from your resume. They'll be about where you've worked or you're volunteered or your internship. It'll be the job title, the organization, the things that you did in that volunteer or internship experience. So all of that stuff is gone into your resume. If you're creating a resume or you've already done one, this would be a good time to update it with your school's career center, just to make sure you have all the latest information. And that will be a big, big part of the building block of your profile. And I'll show you some examples in a minute. Your headline is super important. And I'm going to show you some samples in a minute, people that have done it well, people that are not doing it so well. You could, some people, it defaults to just student at X university. That's not terrible, but you could help it out by putting a little more information in. You could put in your major. I saw one that said biomedical engineering, and then it actually used a vertical slash, which this is just a personal preference. I like a vertical slash in a headline more than the slanty slash. Tufts Africana Community Senator. So my major, an important extracurricular. On the other hand, if particularly you might choose to say like key skills, economics major, vertical slash, research and finance internship experience, if that's your situation. There's no one right way. It's more just that it's an opportunity to share what's important about you, what could be interesting to an employer, and put a little more detail in. At the minimum, if you have a declared major, put that in. So now we're going to leave this and go to LinkedIn itself to show you some things. That's just my home page, not too exciting yet. So I'm going to talk first about, I looked around for student samples, and then I thought, well, if I use Tufts or schools that you all are from, that's almost like me critiquing people's LinkedIn profile. It seemed a little personal. So I found a couple from Middlebury, hopefully not getting too personal here, but just as an example. Her initial Z is there because I'm not a close connection of hers. What do you notice right away about this picture, right? It's a really nice photo, but does it do a good job of showing a head and shoulders, you know, full face view of her? No, it doesn't. So while I like it a lot as a picture and it's creative, I don't recommend that approach as a LinkedIn photo. I say keep it simple, a head and shoulders picture. If you aspire to a very conservative corporate environment, a suit jacket, blazer, tie can never go wrong. On the other hand, you know, see what's appropriate for your industry. You talk to your career counselor about what type of picture will best show you, but the simple way is business or business casual clothing, head and shoulders shot, which can be taken by a friend or a family member taking a whole bunch of shots with a camera, a phone camera. It doesn't have to be fancy. Now you see hers defaults to, you know, she has Middlebury College class. I think she could, you know, put a little more info there that might help communicate to employers. The other thing I wanted to show you is, look, interestingly, she has a lot of different internship experiences, but she didn't put any bullets in. Bullets like a resume bullet describing what she did. So that's an opportunity that she's missed. On the other hand, she has included her high school. That's a decision you make as you move through your college program. It's helpful to have high school there while you're certainly a freshman, sophomore, first year sophomore. As you get beyond that, it's up to you. Again, you might keep it in, you might not. Now, the skills and endorsements. Oh, look at this. I call this the cheesy skills section, okay? I want to trademark that because, you know, your grandmother could endorse you for Python and Java. And even if that's not her field, there's no, you know, quality control of who or what endorses you. On the other hand, it is important because employers do look at this. And when they're using an algorithm, you know, to search for someone with particular skills, they definitely plug in keywords like Python or Java, if that's the skills. And and so you want to start adding to your skills, easy to do. And as you gain more skills from taking courses, again, or job or internship experience, you add them to this list. And the other quick tip about the skills is she has more skills, French, different things. You get to pick what order they're in, but you have to go in and only the top 3 show. So when you're at that stage, you want to just see which are your top 3 that you want to show. Now, accomplishments. This is where, oh, you know what? I'm going to go to my profile actually to show you how that looks when you're editing in case you haven't done it in a while. Right, and you can see my background is very plain. This is just one of the ones that LinkedIn offers you as an option. You can use their default background when you're beginning, which is the blue background with the little lines. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you get more comfortable, it's great to have a picture that at least, you know, you feel comfortable with, that's not distracting. And if you want a picture that, again, showcases something about your work interests, your professional self, we'll show you some examples later. That's something you can do. Now, the About section, many people don't use, or they don't use it well. It's optional, but you can think about, do you want to start with an about section that says, I'm a junior at such and such college, majoring in biology, recently worked on such and such in an internship or a research lab. So you could say a little bit about who you are and what you've done. You can also, once you know, and again, it partly depends where you are in your school journey. If you really know your job goals, you can have, oh, by the way, you don't have to put your email in there. That's something I choose to do, but I don't necessarily recommend it. But see, I put specialties, and then I have a lot of keywords listed. You could use the word skills and a colon, and then skills listed. Again, it's optional. It's something to talk to your career counselor about what are the skills that you're featuring on your resume, and if you're featuring them, it can seem a little redundant. You can say, oh, but I have those skills in my my cheesy skills section. Why do I need them here? Well, that's because of how the algorithm works. When people are searching for you, if they put in that keyword of Python, it helps you if it's in your about section, and it's in your experience section, and it's in your skills section. So hopefully that makes sense. So the experience section, again, very easy to edit. You just click on the pencil to add jobs, add experiences, and education, same thing. If you study abroad or spend a semester or a year at a different school, you can add that right here. Now, I wanted to show you, you have the option, and some of you may have already seen this, you can put in activities and societies. So this is one place you can share your extracurricular activities, and it's perfectly fine. The only downside there is it'll be in teeny weeny text underneath your school. Then if you have any special licenses or certifications that you've gotten along the way, sometimes students do as they're getting different technical trainings, or might have been a safety training to work in a laboratory or anything, any technical tool, add it in here. These are my skills with endorsements, just means my grandmother and great Aunt Mary, endorsed me for some of my skills. Recommendations, when you're ready, you ask, a supervisor if they're comfortable recommending you on LinkedIn. Now, interests. This includes, this is another part of your brand, because people will look at this, and it's, if I'm following certain organizations, again, for me, they're mostly professional organizations, industry organizations, nothing wrong with that, my college. The only time when it might conflict with your brand is, for example, if you change your career direction. You start out majoring in art and following art things, and then you switch to biology, and you're really serious about biology. You want to make sure that this intersection doesn't just have you connected to art things if you're very focused now. So that's the main way that that's important. Now I wanted to go back to my other profiles to show you, oh, I know, I wanted to show you another student sample, just so it looks more, yeah, this is another Middlebury student. Again, that's the plain LinkedIn background. Nothing wrong with it, just to know that it's an option to replace it with a picture that reflects just a different color or something that's important to you. Now again, see, she has some interesting internships with no bullets. So, due for an update. Under her other opportunities, she does have bullets. And you'll also see some people use kind of blocks of text to describe their experience. And you'll see that with, adult professionals, that if you're looking around at profiles too. I'm not a huge fan, just because it's harder to read. It's not wrong, it's not bad. I just don't like, I think, remember, an employer isn't necessarily going to sit and read a book here. They're going to do a quick scan. They're kind of looking for keywords, looking for, and if they're interested, just like with a resume, they'll read more in detail. So here, you know, she wrote in, which you can do, text describing her gap year. Now, the gap semester, here's the thing, if someone like here, she did she was doing a spring semester abroad in France. I agree, you want to leave, if you do study abroad, put it in as a separate experience like this, a separate education, so that it really pops out. Again, she has her high school diploma. Now, I wanted to show here, this volunteer experience, she has bullets listed. She raised $4,000. She's doing, you know, some things that were meaningful to her. Why did she put it in volunteer and not under her experience? It depends, right? Suppose she decides, oh, I'm really, really interested in teaching, particularly English as a second language, but maybe some other kind of teaching. She would move that ESL tutor experience, she might decide to move it into the experience section, just so it's more noticeable. Or if she decides she really likes fundraising for a good cause and might want to do an internship or a job in that area, again, she could move this up into experience. It's your choice. You'll also see some people, for example, if you're a, let's say like the sample headline I gave, where someone's in the student senate, right? Student senate could be listed as a volunteer experience, or it could be listed under the, you know, the experience section. It's partly about which things are going to be more interesting to employers or internships that you're more interested in. And if you're not sure, again, talk to your career center for advice about that. It's not right or wrong. It's more, what do you want to be easier for people to find? Now I want to go to, oh yeah, I wanted to go to mine again to show you some more, because it's have to be in the edit function to show you all the, look at this, add profile section. Okay, the about, we talked about that. Featured, we won't talk about that right now. That's a little bit more advanced, but then experience, education, licenses, right? There's the cheesy skills section. Now, if you click on accomplishments to expand it, oh, look what there is, publications. If you have supported or worked with for something that got published, that's a place it can go. Courses that you take, that's more, yeah, if you take like an outside course that's not part of a university curriculum, more like a training course. Honors and awards, excellent things to include. Test scores, again, talk to your career center counselor. It depends on your career field. Many career fields don't care what your SAT or ACT test scores were, but you can check on that. Languages that you speak, definitely. Organizations. Okay, this is another place where you can put details about, let's say, a place that you're like an extracurricular that you're very involved with, because you get to put, you know, the dates you were involved, you get to put a little more detail. So that's a place you could put an extracurricular if you don't want to put it in your experience section and you don't want it to just be a teeny little one-liner. So we'll X out of that. Oops, where did we go? I just wanted to show you all the options, because one thing about LinkedIn is when you're just looking at it on the surface, you don't always know what else is in there. Like, what are all the places you could put things? Supported languages means you could do your profile in another language. Click on additional, that's recommendations, yep. Just wanted you to be aware of some of those, because some of those, like accomplishments or like honors and awards that you've received, are things that you really want to be aware of right now. Basic things that you would go on your resume. Now, while we're talking about branding, I wanted to show you another student example. This is a just graduated senior, happens to be from Tufts. But I thought of her because she worked in our office, so I knew, you know, she would have worked on her profile. And she did some interesting things. Look at that picture. Well, should we all have pictures of giant radishes? No, but look what she's interested in: agriculture and food access, healthcare and research, research assistant, that's one of the roles she's played, biology major. So she's giving, again, not everyone will choose to do that, partly because you may not be sure yet what you're interested in. But as a graduating senior, she'd had some experiences. She knew what she's interested in. So she picked out this picture. Maybe she took it herself, I don't know, to, again, it reflects her brand. My picture with the purple, you know, thing behind me is sort of brand neutral, I would call it. It's not doing anything special for my brand, but it's not detracting from it. Hers, she chose to go, that's sort of the advanced level when you really know what you want and you want to customize that picture. If you look at her little personal photo, well, that's interesting too, right? What would we tell her if she wanted to work on in a Wall Street bank, right? We'd say, not the right picture for that, right? Not a professional workplace outfit for that type of industry, but that's not her goal. So the other thing to watch out for in pictures is don't have animals in it. If you are wanting to be a veterinarian, it's okay to have a small animal but you definitely need your head and shoulders to be the focus. I've seen some very hilarious vet pictures on, I don't have time to show you now, but oh my gosh, some of them, the horse is like filling the whole frame and there's this teeny little person next to them. Or they're holding a giant wildlife bird that they are helping at the beach. And it's a great picture, but you can't really see their face. So don't go for the big birds or animals, more the head and shoulders. Now, she made an interesting choice that I also just wanted to share quickly. Look what she does with her about. It's pretty long, right? Well, if you read it, it's very interesting. It's very thoughtful. It says a lot about who she is, what she cares about, what she's done. My view on this is it's very well done. I would also wonder, you know, again, you want to think about your audience. If you're going for an engineering job or a biomedical research job, I don't think those employers want to read something this long. That's a personal opinion. But they might want to see a list of your skills and some highlights of your internships, but that's everybody's, you know, there's not just one right way. So again, bullets. And interestingly, she chose to feature one course that she took because it's so related to her goals. And it's a graduate level course. And then she features, again, the study abroad. So just some different ways you can do it. And there's her cheesy skills. Again, if you look at her organizations, the Sherwood Project, Free Healthcare Project, I think she also has that in her experience. Yeah, she does. So different choices, different options. Now, I think we'll check in before I start talking about using LinkedIn for searching, finding people, finding information. Let's check in and see if there are questions so far. Anything, Susanna, that I should?
Nothing in the chat, Leslie, but a few questions did come in. Sorry, kid background noise. Keeping it real on the presentation. So there was a good question about if people have extra time this summer, is it worth doing kind of like a course or a certification, just something that you could put on that piece of your LinkedIn profile. And I did think it would be a good time to mention that through Tufts and likely other universities as well, you have that subscription to LinkedIn Learning, where if there's a course that you want to take through LinkedIn Learning, you can mention that in your profile. And then Leslie, if you had any other ideas about that.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Great question. And the idea would, things about taking courses particularly in this time period, if you have a little time in hand, I figure there are two types. One type is if you want to learn Spanish for fun or ukulele because you wanted to try an instrument. By the way, it's one of the easiest instruments to play, at least a little bit. That's just for you. And it might not be reflected on your LinkedIn. Professional or skill building or tool courses, great. You know, just be sure it's something, in addition to putting it on your LinkedIn, is it something you're interested in, or do you have some sense either from feedback or information or your knowledge of the field that it would be useful in your possible career fields? And if you're not sure which courses would be the most useful, great time to talk to alumni and ask for advice. But if there is something you're interested in, yeah, this could be a great time to take it, and you could feature it anywhere, including you could feature it in the About section, currently taking blah blah to build my skills in blah blah. You could also add it, I would also want you to add it under the additional information section or under the education. Right, great question. Anything else, Susanna, for now?
Yeah, another question came up in the chat, and that is, would you recommend that people keep their LinkedIn profiles public? Or would there be any kind of guidance there when not to, or when to do that?
Thank you for that question. That is excellent. The only time to have it not be public, to the extent that you can, is when you're working on it and you're really doing a lot of tweaks and edits and you're not sure about it yet. But once you have something that you feel like, okay, this reflects where I am right now, this is good enough for where I am right now, then I recommend having it be public, because again, you want to be found. You want people, and when you reach out and check somebody's profile out and think, oh, maybe I'll ask that alum for an informational interview, sometimes that person will ping right back at you or ask to connect to you or send you a message, and you want them to be able to see your information. That's a great question. That's my view. If people have other concerns, again, about privacy for any reason, talk to your Career Center counselor. But general rule of thumb, you want all of your information to be available, because you want to be known and seen potentially by alumni, by potential employers. Does that make sense? Did I capture the?
Yeah, no, I think so. And the only other additional one I mentioned, more for what you're about to talk about now, there was a question about common mistakes people make, either in creating the profile or just in using LinkedIn in general. And I think you already touched upon a lot of those things in the profile creation, the
Right.
do to not do. So yeah, that would be the only other piece too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one common mistake is picture that's a little blurry, or a great picture, but you're really far away on top of a mountain going, yay, I climbed the mountain. Great picture, not the right place for it, head and shoulders. Another common mistake is, actually the most common that I see of people of all ages, is they get something up on LinkedIn and then they forget to update it. So it will literally be out of date with their resume. And that can happen even at a young age. You get an internship or an on-campus job or a couple of new experiences or skills from coursework, and boom, it's out of date. And that's not helpful to you. Another mistake people make is not, some people feel shy about asking people to connect on LinkedIn unless it's their two best friends and their cousin Joe and their brother and their roommate. Well, those people are a great start, and we'll talk about that, but you do need to branch out from that. Some people feel uncomfortable because they think, oh, LinkedIn is like cheesy, or like I'm gonna ask people for jobs, and it really isn't about that. People really understand if you send a message saying, it was good to meet you in the Bio 420 class last year, I'm love to stay connected on LinkedIn. Boom. Simple as that. Or, but we'll talk more about connecting. But that's great. I'll bear that in mind. But those are the most, and then the others are just the obvious mistakes, like a typo, which, believe it or not, does happen. But
yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you brought up connections, Leslie, because I know you'll talk about that more. But there's also a question about recommendations or best practices for connecting with people.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Connections, right? How do you find them? Who are they? Once you're on LinkedIn and you have your presence, if you click on My Network and you scroll down a little, it will suggest people to you. Now, sometimes the suggestions can be so random. People you may know at Tufts University. Well, Tufts has like thousands of employees, so this can be a little random. But if you were at smaller employers or internships, it will be less random. Then there's people you may have worked with. Okay, again, we share connections, it's less random. Then there's people in similar jobs or similar roles. In your cases, it's probably students from your school. Again, could be once you're, and then this is people in my industry. So that's one place you may see suggestions, and it can definitely include like, oh yes, I do know her. Now be careful. If you clicked that, if I click that blue button there, I used to think that as long as I was on my, and LinkedIn does change things sometimes, as long as I was on my laptop and not my phone, it would not send a request to connect, but it would pop up a thing saying, oh, you can customize this. Let's do it with Molly. I do want to be connected to her. She's a colleague at Tufts. I'll click connect. See, it says pending. Wait, I want to send her. Okay, I could withdraw it. But interestingly, what I actually want to do is send her a customized. So let's do it on her profile. Connect. Aha. But look at that. Your invitation is on its way. Darn it, LinkedIn. I didn't want you to send it right away because I want to add a note. Hi, Molly. We know each other from work. Let's stay connected on LinkedIn too. Stay cool. Okay, we know each other as colleagues. I have 300 characters, done. So this is an example. So sometimes just when you think you've got a handle on LinkedIn, they change things up. I don't recommend, I always, another mistake is just clicking connect without customizing the message. If I didn't know her well, I would have said, oh, I remember we met at a conference a few months ago. I'd love to stay connected on LinkedIn. Or perhaps I remember you from such and such class, whatever the connection is. So you put a little note in it, unless it's your best friend and you know they'll connect with you anyway. The other, so who do you ask? You ask your friends, for real, yeah. You ask your family members. Again, it doesn't matter if they're not in your target field or interested in your employers. Every person that you connect with helps open up LinkedIn to you. Once you have, if you only have 10 connections, they won't show you very many profiles. That can be a little, all this great research I'm going to talk about is harder to do. But once you have a few more connections, again, family, friends, neighbors, friends from high school, friends from your college, people you met at your internship or your job, people you met through an activity or a club. And really, it doesn't have to be at the close friend level. So for example, I might look up, I'll show you, I put in up here, Keystone Partners. Okay, that's a place I worked 20 years ago. Okay, y'all won't have that, but just as an example, you could put in the name of that employer where you did your internship. And then if I click on see the 97 employees, oh look, the first one, I do know her at the sort of colleague acquaintance level. I'm not going to do it right now, but she's an example of someone you worked with a while back, but who would probably remember who you are. You don't need to worry about that, right? You could just say, click to connect. Oh, dear Penny, it was great meeting you back in outplacement days. Love to stay connected on LinkedIn, right? And we have samples of these LinkedIn messages and requests to connect on our Career Center website, Tufts Career Center website, and you're welcome to check out those and also, again, the resources. So that's one way you find people to connect with, searching by your employer. You click here to clear. Or now let's get to the, let's assume you've reached out to some family, some friends, some acquaintances, people you've met along the way. Now you're going to be doing some research. And I'm going to use Tufts. I put in Tufts, but you can put in your school or any school, but for alumni search, you want to use your own school. And we click on the school name. And I love this as an example of truth in advertising, right? In the Boston area, how often does anywhere look like this? For like 2 or 3 weeks in May, right? But like your LinkedIn profile and your resume, you're telling the truth. You're just not talking about the sleet in January. You scroll down a little, and this is true on the other university pages too. You click on alumni, and then this is just an easy way to find the alumni. There's another way to reach people too that Advanced People Search will show you in a minute. But right now, suppose you're interested in alumni who they don't, I'll pick Google, but you could put in any employer by clicking add. I'm interested in what alumni work at Google. Oh, let's see, Google, and you scroll down. Oh, that's quite a lot of people, right? 277, but it tells you where they live. Well, let's say I'm interested in, if you're really exploring and doing research about who does what with what careers, I recommend don't use the location geography piece. So we'll leave it open. We're just exploring. And then I say, well, 270, that's a lot. I don't think I'm going to be a software engineer. I wonder what they do with marketing. Like, what is that at Google? So I put it in as a keyword. That means the alum has to have that word in their profile somewhere. Maybe not the job title, but look what you see. Head of marketing, brand marketing manager, associate product marketing, and they tell you the class year. And what's nice about this is you can see there's a real range. So let's say I was interested in this person. I would click on the profile. I would read through the profile, and if I felt after reading it, like, yes, oh, she got an MBA. Okay, well, maybe I want to do that later. She could be an interesting person to talk to. If I want to talk to her for feedback and advice, now I can send her a message because LinkedIn makes me get a premium subscription because I do so many searches and so much teaching. Y'all won't have to. So I could do a customized request to connect. Again, I click connect and then write her a message. Hi, recent and current, blah, blah, Tufts student. Love to speak to you briefly about marketing at Google. That's one way to do it. Another way is scroll down and see what groups she's in. Okay, if we click on interests, oh, she doesn't have any listed. Otherwise, there would be a button to click here to show additional interests, including groups. There is a group called the Tufts Career Networking Group, which means I'll get someone else so we can show you that real quick. Okay. Let's see if she's got it. Head of Learning and Development. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I want to talk to her. Let's see what groups she's in. Yeah, so Sarah, see where it says see all under interests. We're going to click that. Then we'll click groups. You can do this with anybody, but we're just saying, oh, rugby football. Let's see if she's in. There she is. Tufts University Career Network, Tufts University Professional Network, both are ones that students can join. I've clicked on the group. I just forgot her name though. But so what you would do is click on see all. You're inside the group. You have to join the group too, right? For this to work, which you can do. You join the group, you click see all, and then you would search by name. And you can send the person a free message inside of LinkedIn. Again, whatever your school is, let's say, now we'll go back to my home page. Let's say I was interested in, I'm from Tufts University, and I'm interested in the environment. Oh, that's not what I want. I want groups. And sometimes you have to play a little with LinkedIn to get it. Okay, let's click groups. I'm going to search groups. And then I'm going to put in Tufts there, Tufts Environmental Alumni. Many of these alumni groups, and that's a group, and I could request to join, right? Many of them are very open to students, so you can try that with your own school. And groups are a great way to, you can learn about a field from the posts. Sometimes jobs or internships are posted there. You can, and again, inside the group, you can message for free. So hopefully that was clear. So I wanted to show that Alumni Portal a little bit more. So again, you go to the school page, and then you click on Alumni, So in addition to searching by the employer, which we did, you could just put in a keyword. Maybe you're interested in people doing biomedical research. Again, you have to spell it correctly on LinkedIn. And you want engineers in biomedical research, and maybe you do care about a location. You want greater Boston area. Okay, I bet we get a bunch. Wow. That did not work. I can tell because that's too many people. So we try again. Let's do the location first. Greater Boston area. Okay. Now we put the keyword in. See? We try it different way. Biomedical research. Okay. Still a lot of people. So maybe you browse through and you see people that look interesting to talk to, or maybe you get ideas of more keywords you could use to narrow it down. It's fine to browse. It's also fine to narrow it down depending on where you're at in your, or again, you can search by a specific employer, biomedical research at that employer. So that's your alumni portal. Now, if I just click here and click people, look what I get. I get something that says all filters. So now, why would I care about this? Well, I could search for people in a certain region, right? I could search for people at a certain company. And once you have some LinkedIn connections, a company can be helpful because, oh, Nike, that was interesting. Yeah, if I say company, somebody working at Nike, and I click apply, that's going to be everybody. But when I scroll down a little, let's see if I see, oh, look, I have a second-degree connection at Nike. And I could see, oh, Lisa Coleman is who I know who might be able to introduce me. And I would ask myself, do I know Lisa Coleman well enough? Well, we're sort of distant colleagues, so I probably wouldn't ask her. But other people, like this is an alum that I do know, I would feel comfortable asking him, Mark, do you know Stephanie Curtis well enough to introduce me? She does executive recruiting at Nike. I'd send him an email and say, I'd love to speak with her to learn more about recruiting at Nike. I just mentioned that because you may find lots and lots of resources just using the alumni tool for research and for networking and advice. But sometimes if you have a specific company in mind or a specific field in mind, it can be really helpful to also know about the advanced people search, where it's not just alumni, it can tell you who else is out there, either just for a broader search, like if you have a very niche field you're interested in, you could just see who's out there, or to look for the second-degree connections to help you get people to talk to for advice. And again, with a second degree, usually what you're going to do is ask for an introduction, ask your contact if they know them well enough to introduce you. Great. So while you're reaching out to alumni for feedback and advice, you know, part of what you might be asking about is things like what courses or tools what courses to take, or skills to learn, skills to build, what experiences you might want to be trying to get related to your field. You might also, if you develop a relationship with an alum, you know, ask them for feedback about your LinkedIn profile or your resume, right? After you get to know them. I wouldn't do that as the first ask. Other topics coming up in the chat?
Yeah, sure. Leslie, I do have another question specifically about what graduate students might address in their LinkedIn profiles. I know, you know, in addition to having those educational institutions, your positions, that work experience, anything else that you would recommend in particular for someone in grad school?
In grad school, that is a great example of, yes, there may be, like I've mentioned briefly with the undergrads, there may be things that you're doing for an unpaid internship or even a project for school that is very relevant to the work that you want to be doing. So, how you feature that on your resume, you'll, work with your career counselor on. How you feature it on LinkedIn is that choice of, you might feature it as part of your experience section, even though it's not paid work. That's totally fine. You definitely want to use, as a graduate student, make thoughtful use of the about section, because hopefully you have some ideas about not only the skills and experiences you've already had, but kind of where you're headed. And this gets a little subtle, but LinkedIn, and if this doesn't make sense to you, if you're a sophomore or a junior, don't worry, but for the graduate students, LinkedIn, you can be a little bit, what I would say, is aspirational in your marketing, right? So in a resume, for example, it's hard to say, well, you can say it, but it's a little harder to communicate. I'm taking courses and getting qualified to really make a difference with urban education and access to blah, blah, blah. There's not really a space for that on the resume. Whereas in the LinkedIn profile, you can talk about your current skills, but you can also position the skills you're moving towards, the competencies you're building, and you can talk about the contribution, what you can do for an employer right now, but you can also talk about what you plan to do. So I hope, does that make sense, Susanna, the way I described it?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I do have a related question, which is, what are some of the biggest mistakes to avoid in the about section? Have you seen anything
yes.
that you would recommend not doing? I'm sure you
God.
have. I'm sure you have seen things.
I wish I had pulled up a good sample. What some people do is they write literally a book, like as if they were on the Moth Story Hour and they're telling the story of their life. And I've seen some of those that they're quite long, they're really well written, they're really beautiful, but I just no, I just don't think it's effective for that place. It might be great on the radio or as an essay, so sometimes being too long and too personal. Yeah. On the other hand, depending on your goal, depending on your situation, for example, if the motivation to do your disability rights activism comes from some personal experiences, you might share an aspect of that. And again, something that might not go on the resume in that way could be another mistake in the about section that I see is being too vague in general. Economics major, interested in using my skills in finance. Well, that's, if you're a senior and you're positioning yourself, that's you could say more. I also see typos. I also see things that are maybe describing again, this is maybe more for, a senior or a graduate student, but you don't want to just describe things. You also want to talk about impact, right? Just like with your resume, you ask yourself, so what? Who cared? What was the impact or outcome or result of what I did? I see the same, and again, not everything has a big result, but you at least want to ask yourself that question, so you're not just describing something, but you're saying, here's what I do, here's what I care about, here's what my skills are, and here's the way I've made a difference. I mean, I don't mean necessarily saving the world or curing cancer, but it can be small impacts. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And if you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat for everyone or just myself. I did want to say before I forget that we are, as some of you already know, recording our summer programs and putting them up on our YouTube channel. So I'm going to put that in the chat as well, just so people know that that's there.
So I would say, yeah, put down for your about section. You could do a draft, even do it separately if you're not sure about it, of, what do you want to say? What's important to you? What skills or experiences do you think you want to feature? And again, if you're not sure yet, putting something up there can be helpful. It doesn't have to be as focused as Aubrey's with the radishes and the food and all of that. It can still be useful descriptions of your skills and experiences. And so I'd say the main mistake I see is either just people not doing it at all and leaving it blank because they're not sure what to put. So I'd say work with your own thoughts and look. And if you look at other people's profiles online, the more you look, the more you'll see there's a lot of them out there that are sort of like, you'll ask yourself, wait, this is kind of blah, right? Blah is not useful, or there's nothing there. You know, even established professionals sometimes don't do an about section because they're busy or they haven't thought about how to do it. But look at mentors, look at people you admire, or people with, you can also look at marketing people. Even if you're not a marketing person, they've usually put some thought into what are they saying and how are they saying it. And, you know, even if it may or may not fit for your industry, for example, it gives you formatting ideas. Like I got the idea to have, you know, short paragraphs with all caps headlines is what my about section has there. It's pretty short. I have a colleague whose about section is much longer, but she has lots of skipped lines and font variation. At your stage of career, yours probably shouldn't be too long, but you can pick up those tips and ideas about formatting, and definitely, and also knowing you can change it, right? Do it one way, and then a few months later, take a fresh look. Have you changed? Have your skills changed?
Yeah, for sure. Continually evolving, and you're inspiring me to brush up on mine and strengthen it. But I did want to ask, there's one more question that came through before we hit our time, which is, what is the procedure when, say, you're attempting to connect with someone and it's not working, or at what point do you maybe follow up, or what's a good way to do that without being annoying?
Oh, great question. Well, first of all, it partly depends on the purpose of your connection. So if it's, for example, if it's a former coworker or supervisor from a former internship, reach out directly by email and tell them, oh, I'm building my LinkedIn and I'd love to connect with you there too. You just make a direct appeal if you already have a relationship. If it's a new relationship, which it sounds like you might be thinking of, if the purpose of the outreach is that you'd like to speak to them briefly to hear about their career path or their employer or something like that, or get advice for your next career thoughts, then you can think, okay, if my purpose is reaching out to get advice, well, LinkedIn is one method. Another method is, at Tufts, we have an alumni directory. Many schools have them. Many schools will now let their students have access, and you go into that and there are many direct emails there that the alum has put there. So I would use direct email. And again, use either ours or your school's sample networking emails. The subject line is key. Tufts Junior Bio Major with research career questions, something like that, customized to your situation. Short, but long enough so that they can tell, why you're writing to them. It's a personal appeal. The worst thing is when somebody sends, 100 alumni the identical email saying, I want to talk to you about consulting, right? Or just nothing personal, nothing about why that they're interested in that company. So that's what I would say. It's totally fine to make 2 attempts. People are busy, but often even what I hear is even very well-meaning alumni, even myself at times, when they're very busy and the email literally falls off their screen or the LinkedIn message falls off their screen, they don't notice it. And then when the second one comes through, they're like, oh yeah, I wanted to, So that's what I would say.
Same, completely agree. I'm often grateful for that. And I like your wording too of, I'm guessing you're probably very busy. I think it's good to acknowledge that, and it allows the person to say, oh, you know what, things have been crazy. Sorry I didn't get back to you. And that's an easy segue right there.
Right. Great. Right. And the interesting thing about right now with COVID, I've had a couple of folks ask me saying, well, they were like shy to reach out for networking because they were afraid people had like crazy work responsibilities, young children at home, multiple, and I said, well, you just don't know. People are in a whole range of situations, and it's your right to be sensitive and thoughtful about it, but don't hold back from asking. You can just ask in a polite, this may be a very busy time for you in these, unusual times. I agree with Susanna, but it's always okay to ask politely. And I'm a fan of the asking twice. Quick funny story to close out. I once had a speaker speaking to alumni, and I hadn't listened to his whole talk before I had him speak. And he said, Well, I believe in persistence. You should try 8 times before you give up emailing somebody. And my colleagues at the back of the room, we literally gasped in shock. Do not write to someone 8 times.
8 times is pushing it.
Yeah. So it's, you never know. But so, and you can look for, again, resources about informational interviewing and networking on our and your, school career centers will really help. So any other last questions or thoughts?
I'm not seeing anyone anymore in the chat, but I did want to thank everyone for being here, and remind you that anytime you have these kinds of questions, Tufts students, you can certainly speak with advisors at the Career Center. They're around during the summer, and same with students who from other institutions speaking with your Career Center as well. We love having these kinds of conversations and helping you. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Susanna, for support with the tech and the Q&A. Thanks to all of you for coming. And again, you're welcome to check out the recording, and others can as well. Yep. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Good luck with your LinkedIn. Bye-bye.